It's easy to look at someone who appears young, uncertain, or different from the norm and make a snap judgment about their abilities, intelligence, or worth. Human beings are hardwired to process information quickly, to assess threats, opportunities, and pecking orders in a split second. But that instinct, which once served us in the wild, often works against us in the complexity of modern life, especially in places like courtrooms, boardrooms, classrooms, and meeting rooms. When a teenager walks into a courtroom, perhaps dressed modestly, perhaps fidgeting, perhaps quiet and unassuming, our natural response is to project assumptions. They're here to learn, we might think. They must be lost, or worse, they don't belong. But these assumptions are frequently wrong, and that moment, when someone reveals the depth of their ability in spite of how they were initially perceived, should stop us in our tracks. It should humble us because what we just witnessed wasn't a clever disguise. It was the collapse of our own biases, of our own failure to hold space for possibility. Judging someone based on how they look, how they sound, or how old they are is the lazy path. It requires no effort. It demands no curiosity. It allows us to function on autopilot, and autopilot is where real leadership, real insight, and real learning go to die. Imagine a courtroom where the atmosphere is tense, the judge commanding with decades of experience, and into that room walks a teenager. The judge cracks a dismissive joke, the audience chuckles, and everyone settles into their assumption that the young person must be lost or confused. But then, with precision and control, that young individual begins to speak. Not only speaking but dismantling arguments, citing obscure precedents, revealing a mastery of legal reasoning that no one expected. Suddenly, the room isn't laughing, it's listening, hanging on every word. In that moment, the teenager didn't just earn respect. They exposed a flaw in the system, a system that confuses appearances with ability, a system that has forgotten that genius doesn't always come in a tailored suit or a seasoned voice. And the irony is that this moment wasn't just about the teenager. It was about everyone else in the room. Their reaction, their silence, their shock, it speaks to how narrow our definitions of competence and value have become. We are so conditioned to believe that authority comes with age, with degrees, with titles, that when someone without those markers challenges the hierarchy, it rattles us. But it shouldn't, because authority isn't about age, it's about impact. Intelligence isn't about diplomas on the wall, it's about insight in the moment. And respect should be given freely, not just to the ones who look the part, but to those who show up, who dare, who try. The deeper truth is that every person we encounter has something to teach us, if we're willing to look past our expectations. Every underestimated individual is a mirror showing us our own blind spots. And when we dismiss someone prematurely, we don't just insult them. We rob ourselves of the opportunity to grow. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It doesn't happen when everything goes according to plan. It happens when our world, is disrupted, when we're forced to reconcile what we thought we knew with what's right in front of us. That teenager didn't enter the courtroom to surprise anyone. They walked in because they belonged there. Because they did the work, because they had something to say, the surprise, the shock, that was ours, that belonged to everyone who laughed, who scoffed, who dismissed. The lesson then is clear. Stop underestimating people. Stop treating youth like ignorance. Stop assuming that brilliance only comes with gray hair or years of service. Some of the most insightful, capable, transformative minds are hidden in plain sight, sitting quietly, taking notes, listening deeply, preparing. And when their moment comes, they don't ask for permission. They step forward and they lead. This isn't just about courtrooms. This is about workplaces, schools, families, communities. It's about how we choose to show up. Do we lead with curiosity or with assumption? Do we invite people in, or do we build barriers to keep them out? Every time we underestimate someone, we reveal more about our own limitations than theirs. And every time someone exceeds expectations, they don't just lift themselves, they lift the standard for everyone watching. True intelligence isn't loud. It doesn't always come wrapped in accolades or presented through flashy resumes and framed degrees. In fact, more often than not, it reveals itself in the silence between reactions, in the clarity of a response when the pressure is high, in the ability to act with poise when everyone else is looking for approval. Action is where real intelligence lives. It's not a theory, it's an instinct that's been sharpened through observation, reflection, and quiet effort. You can memorize facts, rehearse arguments, collect titles, but when the situation demands courage, composure, and clarity, it's the ones who have internalized what matters who stand out. Those are the ones who don't just know the answers, they embody them. A courtroom, like many institutions, places a premium on credentials, degrees, years of service, formal recognition. These are the markers we use to establish credibility. But intelligence has always had a rebellious streak. It doesn't always respect the rules. Sometimes it shows up in ways the system didn't account for, from people the system didn't expect, and when that happens, there's usually a moment, a pause, when the room has to recalibrate. That moment when a person speaks with such clarity that everyone else realizes they've misjudged. That recalibration isn't just about the speaker, it's about the failure of the framework that was supposed to recognize brilliance before it was obvious. When the teenager in the courtroom began to speak, it wasn't just about legal knowledge. It was about the command of structure, the rhythm of persuasion, the way logic was applied with precision and restraint. There's a difference between knowing a rule and knowing when to apply it, between memorizing law and understanding justice. That's what the room felt in that moment. Not just intelligence, but intelligence with presence. And that presence didn't need anyone's permission to exist. It didn't ask for validation. It simply made itself undeniable. This is why we need to reframe our understanding of intelligence. Because the real measure of intelligence isn't how much you know. It's how you use what you know when it matters most. In environments built around hierarchy and tradition that can feel disruptive. When someone bypasses the expected path and still delivers at the highest level, it creates discomfort, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they've revealed how narrow the gate has been all along. Systems reward those who follow the rules, but intelligence rewards those who understand which rules to keep, which to bend, and which to break. And yet, we've built a culture that worships the image of intelligence more than the substance. The awards, the test scores, the speaking engagements, these are all signals, and while some are earned, they're not always accurate. They tell you what someone has done, not necessarily what they can do. But watch what someone does under pressure. Watch what they do when no one's watching. That's where the truth is. That's where intelligence reveals itself not as performance, but as pattern. Not as potential, but as practice. The teenager in the courtroom didn't fit the narrative, and that's why it worked. Because brilliance doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be witnessed. The judge, the audience, the staff. They all saw it unfold in real time. A masterclass in articulation from someone they had already written off. That's the moment where performance-based credibility collapses. That's when the myth of you must first prove you belong dies. Because the truth is, those who act with intelligence don't wait to be given a place at the table. They build their own space with every move they make. This is what happens when we rely too heavily on titles and not enough on trust. When we teach kids to chase grades but not to develop judgment, when we reward noise over nuance, intelligence is not loud. It doesn't always speak first, but when it speaks, it cuts through everything. It realigns the conversation. It forces people to listen, not because of who's speaking, but because of what's being said and how it's being said. It reminds us that we've built our systems to identify the expected, not to catch the extraordinary when it comes from an unexpected place. We see this everywhere. Companies ignoring junior employees with visionary ideas, schools overlooking quiet students with deep insight, Leaders dismissing team members who don't fit their mold, but true intelligence doesn't wait for permission. It isn't hindered by who's in the room. It acts, it solves, it adapts, and when it does, it doesn't need a spotlight. The room lights up on its own. Humility is not weakness. It's not passivity. It's not the absence of ambition or drive. Humility is the quiet strength of someone who knows they don't have to dominate the room to make an impact. It's the confidence to lead with questions rather than answers. It's the ability to say, "I don't know," without shame, and to say, "I was wrong," without hesitation. In environments where authority is everything, courtrooms, boardrooms, political stages, humility can feel out of place, but that's only because those environments are often built around ego, not effectiveness. When a teenager walks into a courtroom disguised as a student, as an observer, as someone beneath the threshold of authority, and then demonstrates an intelligence and composure that upends the room, what they're practicing isn't just confidence. It's humility in action. The real difference between arrogance and authority is humility. Arrogance demands attention, authority earns it. Arrogance assumes superiority, authority acknowledges the responsibility that comes with influence. The teenager who holds back judgment, who listens first, who doesn't interrupt, who allows others to underestimate them, this is not naivety. This is strategic humility. It's what allows someone to walk into a space dominated by hierarchy and still hold their ground without confrontation. It's not about overpowering anyone. It's about standing fully in what you know without needing to announce it. The ones who do this aren't trying to win the spotlight. They're too busy watching, learning, understanding the system from the inside. In most systems, especially those governed by tradition, humility is overlooked. It's mistaken for weakness or inexperience. We train people to be assertive, to speak first, to dominate the conversation, to present themselves as the smartest person in the room. But what if the smartest person in the room is the one who's saying the least, the one who's absorbing every detail, reading every cue, mapping the landscape with care? That kind of humility isn't a lack of voice. It's the discipline to wait until the voice is needed. It's the wisdom to recognize that speaking less can say more, that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage, that power isn't about control, it's about clarity. The teenager in disguise didn't reveal their intelligence through ego. They didn't interrupt or push their way into credibility. They let their work speak. They let their logic build momentum. They didn't have to demand respect because respect began to emerge naturally from those watching. This is the quiet power of humility. It doesn't chase recognition. It doesn't wear its credentials like armor. It allows the truth to reveal itself through behavior. It's not defensive. It doesn't need to protect an image. It's rooted in something deeper than validation. It's rooted in purpose, and that purpose is what people feel. You can tell when someone is there for attention versus when someone is there to make a difference. Humility makes that difference obvious. It's what gives credibility its weight, because people don't follow titles, they follow trust, and trust doesn't grow from arrogance. It grows from consistency, from honesty, from a willingness to learn. When the judge mocked the teenager, it wasn't just about the words. It was about the unspoken assumption that a young person couldn't possibly belong in that arena. That assumption was based on a model of status, not substance. But humility isn't bound by status. It knows that real ability doesn't need permission to exist. We admire those who don't flinch under pressure, who respond instead of react, who can sit in silence while others fill the space with noise. That discipline is humility. It's what separates the performer from the professional. The teenager didn't need to put anyone down to rise. They didn't need to be combative to be heard. They simply trusted what they knew and let it lead. That kind of humility is rare because it can't be faked. It's not performative. It's not curated for applause. It comes from doing the work without expecting credit, from being so focused on the mission that the ego doesn't get to drive the process. In leadership, humility is often the hidden advantage. It's what gives people room to breathe, to try, to fail, to grow. A humble leader doesn't have to have all the answers. They create the conditions where the best answers can emerge, from anyone, regardless of rank, experience, or background. The teenager in disguise did just that. They shifted the energy in the room not through force, but through presence, and that presence was only possible because of humility, not just the humility to be quiet at first, but the humility to let the moment speak for itself when the time came. Systems are built to be predictable. They function on rules, protocols, precedents, and expectations. The more structured a system is, the more it leans on hierarchy and routine to maintain order. In places like a courtroom, the structure is everything. There's a way to speak, a way to dress, a way to move, even a way to be acknowledged. Everyone has a role, and that role defines how they are treated. But systems, for all their order, are not perfect. They're not designed to handle the unpredictable. They're not built to welcome disruption. And yet, it's precisely in these moments of disruption that systems are truly tested and, if they're honest, improved. When someone challenges the norm, not aggressively, not rebelliously, but through excellence that defies expectation, the system has a choice. It can reject the anomaly, or it can adapt to accommodate it. A teenager walking into a courtroom and revealing themselves to be not just competent, but brilliant, doesn't just challenge an individual's assumptions. It confronts the entire system with its blind spots. Why didn't the system anticipate this? Why wasn't there room for it already? The genius wasn't hidden. It was simply unrecognized because it didn't arrive in the form the system was conditioned to acknowledge. This is where the true potential of a system is revealed, not in how well it maintains tradition, but in how quickly it evolves when something extraordinary enters the picture. A resilient system doesn't see disruption as a threat. It sees it as a signal. It listens when the unexpected happens. It reflects on why its filters failed. It doesn't double down on its old processes. It updates them, because the moment something unexpected succeeds within a system, the system is no longer what it was before. It has been stretched. It has been forced to confront its limitations. That confrontation is uncomfortable. It threatens those who are invested in the status quo. It exposes the bias embedded in the hierarchy. And in many cases, it makes gatekeepers feel like they've lost control. But real leadership isn't about control. It's about stewardship. It's about making sure the system serves its purpose, not its tradition. A courtroom's purpose is justice. A school's purpose is learning. A company's purpose is value. If those systems reject innovation or insight simply because they arrive unconventionally, then they've lost sight of what they're actually there to do. In every industry, every organization, every community, we see systems that have become too rigid. They reward the familiar and punish the unfamiliar. They elevate people who play the game well, but overlook those who refuse to play it in order to change it. But the greatest innovations in any system, legal, educational, technological, cultural, have always come from those who didn't fit the mold. The ones who saw the boundaries and moved through them, not out of defiance, but out of vision. These are the people who don't ask if they're allowed. They ask what needs to be done, and then they do it. The teenager in the courtroom didn't ask for a new system. They revealed what was possible within the existing one when it was approached with a new lens. That kind of moment is rare, but it's also a gift. It forces everyone in the room to rethink what they thought they understood about ability, about roles, about who belongs where. And that's the beginning of a healthier system, not one that is broken and replaced, but one that is willing to be disrupted in service of becoming better. Systems should never be so rigid that they can't make space for brilliance just because it arrives dressed differently. They should be designed to evolve, to be challenged, to respond to change. The true test of a system isn't how well it performs under perfect conditions. It's how it responds when something unexpected, something brilliant, something outside the script walks in and changes the outcome. When that teenager spoke, the room didn't just shift because of what they said. It shifted because the system had no pre-programmed response for someone like them. And that shift is where growth begins. Not just for the people in the room, but for the framework they work within. The judge, the lawyers, the clerks. They were all part of a machine that had never accounted for this variable, and now it had to. Systems that survive are not the ones that defend tradition at all costs. They are the ones that learn how to expand when confronted with something that proves their assumptions wrong. That kind of growth doesn't just make space for the unexpected. It makes the entire system stronger. Respect is often treated like a currency, something people believe must be earned through time, achievement, or seniority. But that mindset creates a hierarchy where value is assumed to rise only with age or position. It teaches us to offer politeness only after we've seen credentials, to give someone the benefit of the doubt only after they've proven themselves by conventional standards. This conditional form of respect is fragile and transactional, and it feeds systems of exclusion. When we wait for people to earn our respect before we offer it, we are not being discerning. We are reinforcing bias. We are deciding in advance who is worthy of being treated with dignity based on who they appear to be. The teenager in the courtroom didn't walk in demanding respect. They walked in, and the system automatically offered less, not because of anything said or done, but because of the package the insight came in. Youth, unfamiliarity, unorthodox presence, that absence of immediate respect wasn't just a personal slight. It was a symptom of a larger issue. It was a sign that people had decided what excellence looks like, what authority sounds like, and who deserves to be taken seriously. And when the teenager revealed the depth of their knowledge, the clarity of their reasoning, and the control in their delivery, the respect came rushing in. But by then, it was reactionary. It wasn't proactive. It wasn't built on principle. It was based on being impressed. But real respect isn't about being impressed. It's about acknowledging someone's inherent worth before they perform, before they show you what they can do. It's about creating space for someone to contribute without needing them to prove they deserve to be in the room. That kind of respect builds stronger communities, more innovative organizations, and fairer systems. It shifts the focus from performance to potential, from titles to truth. When respect is offered first, it changes the tone of every interaction. It tells the other person, you matter here. You don't have to fight for your place. You don't have to surprise us into listening. The irony is that we reserve automatic respect for people with certain titles or appearances, even when their actions haven't earned it. And yet, we demand extraordinary proof from those who are new, different, or unconventional. That's not discernment. That's bias masquerading as professionalism. When a judge mocks a teenager because they assume the teenager is out of place, that's not just disrespect. It's a failure of imagination. It reveals an inability to envision that someone young could also be prepared, capable, and ready. And when that teenager calmly, confidently proves otherwise, it's a moment of awakening, not because the judge has seen something new, but because they've finally seen something that was there all along. Offering respect first doesn't mean abandoning standards. It means applying them equally. It means recognizing that potential comes in many forms, and that not everyone walks the same path to excellence. It means acknowledging that our expectations are often shaped by cultural shortcuts, age, tone, appearance, status, none of which have anything to do with real ability. When we lead with respect, we are not making ourselves vulnerable. We are making ourselves open to being surprised, open to learning, open to the possibility that we don't have the full picture yet. The teenager in disguise taught the room something they didn't know they needed to learn. Not just about legal arguments or rhetorical strength, but about themselves, about how quickly they had judged, about how easily they had dismissed. That moment of reversal wasn't just about a clever performance. It was about the recalibration that had to happen internally. It was a mirror held up to everyone watching, asking a simple question: who else have you already decided isn't worth listening to? If we only offer respect after we're impressed, then we are constantly withholding it from those who need it most. Those who are entering the room for the first time, those who are trying something bold, those who don't yet have the accolades but who carry a spark that the world hasn't recognized yet. When we offer respect first, we create an environment where those sparks can grow, where people aren't performing to gain permission, but contributing because they know their voice has weight in a courtroom, in a classroom, in a boardroom. Every space is transformed when respect is assumed, not earned. When we walk into a space and are treated as if we have something valuable to say, we are more likely to say it. When we are dismissed before we begin, we either withdraw or fight back. Neither response builds trust. But when we know we're respected, even before we've had our moment to speak, we don't waste energy proving we belong. We simply show up, fully. That's when the best work happens. That's when real growth begins. That's when unexpected brilliance finally has the space to shine.